Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Jeff Rock, and welcome to another D. Hilton Associates webinar. It has been quite some time since we've been able to sit in the studio and talk with you, so we came with the big guns this time. So we're going to be talking about the National Compensation Forecast, looking at 2023, what we can expect to see as far as budgets and a couple of other great topics as well. This is going to be a multi-part webinar, so we're not going to be able to get through the entirety of the compensation forecast today, but we're going to lead in with the important bits that we all know that you're wanting to see from the get-go. We've got a lot to cover, a lot of great information to talk about. But first, let's talk about some administrative items while everybody takes some time to get logged in and settled in. We will be recording this webinar, so if you miss anything, we will have a copy of it posted on our website in the next couple days. Give us about 2 to 3 business days to get that up there. Additionally, you will receive a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that we will be going through today in your email. You'll receive a follow-up email if you've registered, even if you didn't actually participate in the webinar live. You'll get one of those, has a link in there. Click that. You'll be able to download the PowerPoint. You'll also receive a survey. Let us know how we're doing. If you liked the content we brought to you, if there's something that we missed, anything along that line, let us know how we're doing. A lot of this content comes from recommendations from you guys, so let us know what you would like to see from that point on. If you have any questions or comments during the process, please don't hesitate. We've got the Q&A section. That section will come to just the panelist and myself. Or we have the chat section, which as default will come just to the panelist or myself, but you can actually switch that over to talk to everybody participating into the webinar today. We'll try to keep the webinar to about 45 minutes or so to allow for questions at the end, but we're also going to try to answer questions on the fly. Sometimes it's better to address those, so please don't hesitate to go ahead and post those questions if you have anything that comes to mind. All that said, without further ado, I'm going to introduce the star of the show, of course, John Andrews. How are you, John?
Well, I'm glad you asked because I'm doing horrible.
You're doing horrible.
But with all your housekeeping, I don't know if we have time for all my problems.
Well, we're going to do the best we can. Today is the be brief, be brilliant, and we'll be gone.
Okay, got it. Got it. No, I mean, literally last 10 days I've been losing sleep. It's these 2 websites. There's this Instagram site. It's Taking Your Dog Over the Rainbow. Have you heard of this?
No, this is a new one.
It's like your last days with the dogs, and I go to bed, and then it's an hour later. My wife literally took my phone last night and says, "You got to stop this.
This is unhealthy for you."
And here's some more tissues. It was horrible. And the other thing that I'm seeing is this. It's this app called Fishbowl, and it's where people go back and forth and say, "Hey, I got an job offer. Does anybody work there? This is what they're offering. Here's the bonus. Here's the sign-on." And then people willingly share information. That's too high, too low, ask for this, or I hate that company. And I'm just losing sleep because I'm actually yelling at my phone when I look at these things. So we're going to start today with one of my favorites that I found. I literally yelled when I saw this. So we're going to pull on our slides here. So I'm questioning, is this the new normal? Listen to what this guy put online. He says, "Don't be afraid to change companies. You're not an asset. It's cheaper to retain you. Go find another job. Find a company willing to buy your time, talent, and abilities at the market rate." And I was just yelling at my phone when I saw this, and I'm thinking, is everyone out there cynical, or is this really the new normal? And I go, we can address this. If we know this is the playing field, and kind of the 3 things that I'm thinking about that we look at is, look, we have to. If people feel or perceive that their pay is unfair, it might as well be unfair.
Perception is reality.
I know HR people, I know boards, I know senior management teams, ton of time to make stuff fair. But then we drop the ball when we explain how to do it. And you know who we kind of rely on? Frontline manager. Mm-hmm. And do we spend enough time with that frontline to handle those things?
Absolutely not.
Because sometimes what happens is, don't look at me. The guys upstairs are making me do this. I know I wanted to give you more money, or I know the raise stinks, and on and on and on. So one of the things we're going to be talking about for the rest of the year, quite frankly, is how do we get that frontline manager to be HR and not say, HR's upstairs or something like that.
We continue to create that us and them. Yeah, it's easy to say, well, it wasn't me, stick with me, keep working hard for me. It was, the guys upstairs. But that creates this, kind of what am I looking for? A rift between upper management and, frontline individuals.
Oh, yeah. And so okay, everybody's heard about transparency, what we should share and not share. And we'll talk about, the good and the bad and ugly of different options, obviously. But this idea is perception of being unfair. And, working in credit union 35 plus years, I've seen people bend over backward to not be that way. And then to fall short just at the end is enough to take all that work down. So if you get a chance, look up this it's called Fishbowl app. There's different communities there, but it's interesting to see what people are sharing with their colleagues and peers. And that's where we wanted to kind of start today.
Yeah. And the days of hush hush, don't talk about compensation. Oh, well, they've certainly come to a middle.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, Jeff, when you get your performance review and it's 10 pages long, what page do you go to first?
Page 10.
Page 10. So that's what we're going to start with today.
Get to the meat.
So we've been tracking this for 20 plus years now, and it always seemed like inflation and budgets went hand in hand, but it lagged a little bit, right? Inflation caused a pinch or pain, and then we reacted to it. But you look at what's happened between 21, 22, and what's predicted for 23. That's a steep curve to deal with. The good news, guys, is you've heard 7.5%, 8.5% inflation out there, and no one's going to put that out there as a budget number for base increases, right?
And we'll certainly talk about why we're not recommending that.
Yeah.
As well.
So, but I think the market's coming back to us. You want real world examples? How many studies articles have you seen where mortgage companies are laying off, wings of people? Wealth management is going back to their old practice of rank and yank, as Goldman has always been notorious for. We've seen the IT providers and the big tech world they're not laying off, but they're freezing, because that's their kind of definition of, taking a pause, so to speak. And we see that all over. So I think we're going to have more people in the marketplace. A beautiful stat that I saw is like 3 to 3.5 million people early retired during COVID, saying, I don't feel safe going to work. Retirement funds were A-okay. And so I'm going to leave early. And that kind of just piled on for the supply and demand issue that we saw in a lot of job families that we work with. But if you look in the last year where the stock market hasn't been too friendly, we've had 60% of those people come back to the workforce. So, be careful of when you look at an article. Make sure you look at the date, because it is moving every day.
Yeah. And this is one of those things where I do multiple large-scale projects as compensation. And so we start seeing some trends. And one of the trends that I saw was marketing was just, skyrocketing. But now recently in the last couple, it's pulling back. We're starting to see some of that market value kind of pull back a little bit. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of that across the scale, across all industries.
So I take that piece of information with the perceptual issue with employees that, they better give you a big old raise this year. Inflation is crazy. And we'll talk about this later in the program. But, I don't know if it's good news. I think the reality is the market's coming back.
Yeah.
Back.
The downside is that, this is pretty much the first time, almost the first time. In 2011, we had a little bit of a blip there, but this is the first time we've been behind inflation, but we're behind quite a lot. But there's some strategies and ideas and concepts that we have to deal with. But again, perception is reality. We've got to manage that perception and manage what we're actually dealing with.
And on this second graph here, Jeff, we're looking at just the salary range adjustments. Historically, throughout your whole career, you saw low twos at the best, right?
Yeah.
And we're saying we need to move a little bit higher than that to make it work. And we've always lagged. I always think this is an interesting concept. The market moves, we react. That's lagging. When you do budgeting, and I know it might be too late for some folks because you've already had to submit some numbers, but why not lead lag? Why not lead and see if that can be reasonable? Why not look at July 1st as a target? So 6 months you lead and 6 months you lag, or why not go 12 months ahead and see if the market catches up to you? It is an expense, but as we're trying to keep more people internally in their chairs, there's things that we might want to look at. So with that said, here's the same thing where we looked at salary range adjustments, and then, this is not salaries. This is, the range, the minimum and the maximums. And then we overlaid the inflation line on it, and we see the same thing. It's very interesting that, it definitely has been a lag strategy forever. So here's here's the page that I think people were looking for. For the folks that haven't joined us before, one of the things that we look at is we hate an overall industry number because not everybody's in the same point in their life cycle. Everybody's not in the same financial situation. So when we look at this, we know about 5% of the credit unions in the industry are below 7% capital. That's fraught with additional regulatory challenges, and a lot of those people have to freeze salaries by mandate. So we want to break those folks out. So, executives still need to be adjusted because they're the folks that are going to get you out of or find the strategies to get you to a better place. The second category is at 7 to 10. So we're calling that sufficiently capitalized. I don't, call it whatever you want. But we're seeing raises in the 4.5% to 6% range for staff, not 3%. How many years has it been deja vu where it's 3?
Guess what it's going to be this year? 3.
And again, that was a great number for the CFO, but not necessarily realities of, the people on the front lines trying to put people in the chairs. And we've always had, what's interesting is we've always had this formula where you usually, for execs, try to double what you budget for staff. So if you are budgeting 3, try to budget 6 for your executive team. And this year, I think we're gonna, might be a little lighter on the executives and a little bit more aggressive on the staff. Mm-hmm. And then the folks over 10%, if you've got a great revenue engine going, you've got a great team in place, you need to be in that 5 and 7.5% range. And then for execs, believe it or not, 8 to 10 is probably going to be something that you need to think about. And then the range is not being in the 2s, but 3.75 to 4. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Jeff?
I think it's going to be this is where we really start having to be strategic about what we're doing with the budget that we have. I mean, it is obviously extremely important that we get cash in the hands of those that are highest at risk. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this as well as we talk about how the inflation is impacting different salary bands and different levels in the organization. This is one of those things where we can say not everybody in the company is going to get 7.5%. That's going to be your top performers. That's going to be your critical workforce. That could be more towards the front of the house. There's a lot of strategies to be able to leverage what budgets we have to make sure that we're getting the best bang for the buck.
We got a question: do you look at IT bands or the job family differently? And the idea there is you can choose to do that, but we always tackle that issue. It's cost of labor, not cost of living.
Correct.
Okay, so when you look at a merit increase, a salary range increase, you're trying to match some type of inflation number. If you have in an area where there's the cost of labor is expensive, that has to be an additional layer that you would add on to the data, so to speak.
Yeah. And when it comes down to it, the IT just in general has been a unique animal because in the past, we've been able to look somewhat locally, but now it is pretty much a national
with hybrid work from home.
Exactly.
It's a national field.
And oddly enough, we've seen some of the numbers actually come down because you're taking in a national average rather than some of the higher areas.
We think it's going to pull back. And then I look at the big employers, in the field, not hiring new engineers, kind of freezing for a while, worried about their sales potential. So they're on the back end, kind of, buckling up a little bit more.
More with less is pretty much what it comes down to as well.
What is it? If I don't want to say gird your loin, you buckle your, how do you say that?
That one's past me there. You're
watching too much Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Okay. But what we want to go through is okay, you're presenting your data to a board, and the board, based on their information, maybe they've retired for a few years, maybe they're in different industries. How do you explain or educate on this subject? And remember, the key thing is we want to follow inflation as the anchor, but then we have to do something better than inflation so you're further penetrated in the salary range.
Yeah. We're dealing with two forces here. One, you want to be able to move individuals through their earning potential. And two, you want to defend that amount against inflation. So we have to take two different structures into consideration when we're looking at all of these kind of perspectives.
And then our next slide here is, these are the classic sources that people go to and that we've used for 20 plus years. And everybody is in the 4s. They're over the 3. They're over the 3 hurdles.
Left that behind.
But we think you need to be above 4.5. So we're at 4.6.
Yeah.
And the triggers for why you want to be a little bit more aggressive this year, and everybody's going to be case to case, but if these are triggers for you, you need to think about how we're going to pull this off. Slower time to fill, just not specialist jobs, but just traditional jobs. This inflation, how long it takes to come back, it's definitely not transitory. It's here for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then, all these commitments to living wage around the company, people are walking the walk. They're doing them. And so that's moving at more than a 2 and 3 and 4% number. So depending where you are and who your competitors are, you have to put that in the mix.
Yeah, and this is a good example of why we try to separate out those 3 bands into sufficiently capitalized and well capitalized. Because if we put all that together, which is essentially what all these other projections have done, you can see the number is lower than what you would expect.
Okay, so this is the point where you can go leave and get to your spreadsheets if you want to.
The CFOs can go take their heart medication at this point.
Yeah, and we're not making light of this. It's a very serious situation, but that's why we want to spend just as much time as how we're going to pay for this. So in our comp forecast that will be coming out next week, or Friday or Monday, depending on how well we get through today, right?
Yes, we'll see how it goes.
The 5 key trends that we're looking for 23. One is budgeting got more complicated because of the inflation issue, and we're going to talk about that today. But flexibility, working with employees rather than just agreeing to remote work, showing you strategies there is the second trend. How to walk the walk when it comes to transparency, because that's going to be a big thing for 23. And then looking at career trajectory, getting off of what our parents told us is up or out, of accommodating some different careers and how that can help us retain folks, but also help maintain the comp structure. And then the idea of getting out of that cycle of just-in-time recruiting, where we've got to fulfill chairs again.
Yeah, transitioning from the gatherers to the hunters, so to speak.
Yeah. So what we're talking about budgeting is kind of lead into this next subject is the idea of an annual review, an annual increase has been embedded since the dawn of time, and we need to ask the question why, and does it serve a purpose anymore? Mm-hmm. Have you thought about that, Jeff?
Absolutely. I actually tried to track down exactly when we decided to start doing an annual increase.
I remember that.
And it was kind of, it was a little shaky. Not too many people are confident about when this thing just to happen. It was mostly tied to a cost of living adjustment sent down by the government, but for the most part, it just kind of happened. We decided.
My hunch is it came from the bargaining units.
Yeah.
When we were, more of a laborer workforce in the United States, and we had people negotiating wages, and they said, look, bread costs more. You got to give us a little bit more in the contract.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's where, that's my theory of where it comes from.
Yep. I mean, perfectly legitimate to me.
But then that put us down another rabbit hole, and the other rabbit hole was like, minimum wage. Where'd that come from? And this is one of my favorite quotes of all time. Chris Rock said, "The reason I pay you minimum wage is because it's against the law."
To pay you less.
To pay you less.
I would, but.
I am excited to go to work today with that mentality.
And unfortunately, no family relation to Chris Rock. It's a shame.
I wasn't even thinking that. But
well, now you should.
Thank you.
Now everybody's thinking that. Now everybody's going, wait a minute, what was his last name?
It's 17 minutes into the program, and I get to say, there's no Jeff in team. It's not about you.
Again.
All about Jeff. But when we do this research, we're looking at, there's no rule that you have to do annual raises. They're not mandatory. It's always been discretionary. I mean, you have to pay minimum wages. There are things about, how many hours we work before overtime kicks in. But I really think people need to take a step back and start rethinking, how do we want to deliver pay? Mm-hmm. Now, once a year, easy peasy when it comes to administration.
Yep.
All the ideas that we throw out take a little bit more administrative work to do. But if we can be responsive to that internal customer, which is the employee, is it worth the extra effort? That's going to be a question everybody needs to ask. But we're going to set the stage of why annual. Okay? So we know 56% of companies are looking at inflation this year, and usually it's an internal driver. And 46% report that there's an increase in cost of living data to determine comp levels. Okay, we're all there. But I think we got to get moved past that and say, how are we going to deliver pay?
Yep.
So inflation's not new. It's I always ask senior managers what were the rates they started with. So when I started, it was 18% savings and 21% mortgages. You ready for an 18%, 19% mortgage?
I'll pass on that.
And we're
not today,
but we're having to deal with 6%, I guess, this week, right?
Yep.
So we've always dealt with it. COVID kind of helped us look at this becomes a national market more than a local market in some cases for some job families. But the big thing, put a circle around this when you share this with your colleagues is, do we have to be so egalitarian when it comes to pay? And then this has been my soapbox. We're a not-for-profit financial institution. The beauty of a credit union is whether you have $1 million or $1 in your credit union, you get one vote. That's beautiful, and it works, and it makes sense, and that's why I'm in this industry. But it comes to the employee side, not employees are equal, right?
Yep. Some are providing disproportionate value to the organization.
And this idea, and this idea of quiet quitting, like, oh my gosh, somebody needed a phrase to excuse the behavior of managers that weren't managing their folks. Mm-hmm. It's not me, it's you, Jeff.
It always is me.
Right? It comes down to we needed some type of fancy phrase to say that.
Yeah. And I mean, the whole concept is not new by any stretch. I mean, Gallup's called it actively disengaged or disengaged for years.
There's some beautiful wordsmithing going on.
Yeah.
But I go back 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years, and they just punch a clock and go home. What is the difference between that phrase and what we're saying now?
Yep.
They're just here for the paycheck. Have we always had that as a segment of our population, of our employee population? Of course. But I'm not going to let anybody off the hook saying, well, it's them, not me, unless you look at you first. And that's why we talk about the transparency and what information we want to share and how we want to be consistent and make sure our employees know we are killing ourselves to make sure we're being fair.
And being very intentional about that whole
Intentional, beautiful word. But think about that is when we're egalitarian, sometimes if you have this beautiful 20% of your workforce that's just killing it, and then we have to give everybody the same thing, and that 80% challenge of not providing that level of service, we're hurting who? The superstars, the ones that we really are doing a great job for you. So don't be afraid to look at some schedules that will look at maybe 80-20,
Yeah.
So one of the things we want to, I think is very important is inflation is thrown out a lot. So we wanted to put a couple ideas together for, first of all, empathy, what it means to do this, have to live with this, and then how it impacts people at different levels.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that we all kind of inherently think of, oh yeah, of course inflation impacts people at different earning levels differently, but we don't really kind of correlate that often. So we wanted to illustrate just how it's actually impacting things so that you can look at strategically how to deliver your budget, how to put things in motion that make sense. And prototypically, at first, when we get paid, we're going to pay taxes. That's step one. Taxes aren't going to be impacted by inflation. That's
all
standard.
Those new IRS workers are going to enjoy you.
Oh, yeah. 50,000 of them coming, allowed to be armed in deadly force.
Yeah, thank
you. So you have to take into consideration that we have a different percentage, obviously, in each one of these buckets that as you go up in earning, it changes the perspective. A little bit lower in earning, you're going to be spending a lot more of the percentage of your salaries and your income in goods and services and housing. And then at the end, if you've done well, if you're lucky, you're able to put some money away and put it into savings. So painting that picture is a way we have to look at it from the get-go. So putting some numbers to this, basically kind of keeping in the illustration that, of course, we pay income tax first. And obviously, those that are higher earners are going to be paying more in income tax. That's not going to change, not impacted by inflation. So we don't really have to take that into consideration from this perspective, but we need to look at it from the cost. And if we look at the percentage of salary or income that's going to goods and services and housing, you can see that the lower earners are dramatically impacted, 61% for the $50,000, all the way up to the 100K earners. And if we put all that together, we look at an inflation rate, and we just, for the sake of this discussion, we looked at an annual rate of 8.66% inflation and a housing rate of 6.9%. So if we put that together, we get an overall inflation rate of 8.62%. If we look at the inflation being about 8.62%, $50,000 earners are not able to make their basic obligations anymore. They have too much month at the end of their money.
Yeah.
And so we're actually losing money out of the savings. So that's where I've been talking a lot about benefits recently with a lot of clients, having to reevaluate how 401ks are impacted, things along that line. The big thing that I wanted to point out here, though, is that even at $100,000 earning, we're not able to put savings away right now. That's pretty huge. We haven't seen that in years, and that is something we really have to look and take into consideration. So if we take a step back and say, okay, we've got the inflation rate grand total of overall is 8.58% in inflation. So if we look at that, you initially say, okay, we're going to have to make at least an 8.5% increase to salaries to be able to bridge that gap. Not necessarily the case here. So we modeled this out to where, a $50,000 earner, if we looked back before inflation was high and we wanted to match those same levels of putting away about 5% and the $200,000 would put away about 10% and so on and so forth into savings. If we wanted to model that same amount, the increase we would need for a $50,000 earner is at 7.8%. Now look on the opposite spectrum, your $400,000 earners would need 6.3%. Now, obviously, these are big raises, but you can see there's a stark difference between—
But this is to keep you even.
Keep you even, exactly. And where the argument here is that as you go up in earning, we're defending your savings against inflation. Whereas if at 50,000 or 100,000, we're defending your house.
Jeff, the word savings is a misnomer. That's your emergency fund when the transmission goes out or you need a tire.
Yeah.
It's not like you're doing wealth building.
Yeah. So at the end of the year, you have $1,400 in your positive maybe.
And if the kid gets sick and you need medicine that's not covered by whatever, when you're minus whatever, you got to make choices. And when you're making those choices at home, you're not an engaged employee.
You got it. And so this is where we're talking about having that kind of strategic distribution of the budgets that you have, of saying those that are most at risk, maybe it's time to focus there if you don't have the budgets to take care of everyone at the same time.
Look, you guys out there that did gas cards this year, huge signal.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have people saying, I got to put $5 in the tank to get to work and then I'll worry about getting home some other way, and you gave a gift card, you gave some peace of mind. And as hokey as that sounds, this is what inflation is doing. I
mean, I remember in the Fishbowl app, there was somebody that posted that said, I am about 75 cents a gallon away from calling in to work out of gas.
Yeah.
So not calling in sick, calling in, I can't make it to work. That's terrifying.
Does that become a PTO category?
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
There's a new benefit.
I'm not joking.
Out of gas, you can we can take a PTO.
I'd love to get there, but I can't.
So the takeaway of this is that we don't need to get to the 8.5 or, if you look at it today, it's like 8.7 and, it depends on the source that you're looking at. We don't need to get there. But we do need to get a lot higher than we have in the past to be able to at least bridge that gap and protect the standard of living that people had before. Whether or not we can get there, again, we've got to focus on those top performers, that critical workforce, making sure we're getting the money in the hands of those that are providing disproportionate value to the members.
Yeah, the message today is that we're real pragmatic. We understand it's a super challenge to get everybody taken care of. And that's why we question egalitarian. We love everyone. We want everybody to be successful, but, responsible to a membership, responsible for a budget, responsible for all these things. What are our strategies?
Yep. And it blew me away when we looked at, $100,000 earners are not able to make ends meet. That just, it's unfathomable to me.
You sound like a very old man. Like, did you know hamburgers used to cost a quarter?
Hey.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So 100,000 was always this magic, aha, I've made it.
I've made it.
There was books on how to get a six-figure job.
It's not the same thing anymore.
And it's not the same.
Nope.
Not the same. So, we transitioned to, we folks that have been with us for a while have seen this slide before, but we want to reemphasize it, in budget season, do some scenarios where you're looking at different ways to get the dollars distributed. So on the left side here, a 2-pool increase, do 5% for your top 20, 2.5 for your 8, you get to 3, that's, one way to look at it. Set the high bar for increases. If you're above midpoint and you're just meeting expectations, maybe we slow down or don't do increases. Why not look at every 6 months?
Yep.
In one of subsequent programs, we're going to talk about, multiple distributions in that first year to get them motivated, and then we're carrying that concept further. What about multiple distributions for all employees and what it would cost, those types of things. Discretionary bonuses, sometimes you can get a big bang for the recognition piece, it moves at a nickel in the paycheck, but the idea is that thank you, you're working hard. We want to get this in your hands quicker than waiting a year.
It's stepping away from compensation to rewards and recognition. That's a hot topic that's been around for quite some time now.
And then the retention pieces. So when someone asked earlier about the IT, think you've got different tools. Just don't think about merit increases and base salary, that there are other ways that we can deliver recognition. And then the idea of lump sums. Not just for Redline employees, but giving money at certain points of the year to recognize that.
And I did have a really good question about, maybe every 6 months give an increase for your top 20%. And he said, well, what about the other 80%? Wouldn't they be upset about that? And the whole concept there was, remember we modeled this out, is that, okay, at the beginning of the year, you gave your whatever merit increase it was, and you said, you've given your performance, you're eligible for up to 4, 5, 6% merit increase. Additionally, in 6 months, we're going to reevaluate that. And some of our top performers are going to be able to be eligible for an additional X percent here.
You want to be in that group. Right?
Yeah.
You want to work to that group. The other thing I think is that, think about this communication nuance. A lot of people say, it's a tight year, tough year. Thanks for your service. We're going to do a 3% budget this year. So everybody's got 3 in their mind. Then they have a friend that gets 6 and they go, I didn't get 6. This is unfair. That's the perception of inequity or unfairness. So a better way to communicate that is to say, raises this year will be up to 6% for our top performers. And then when the person gets 3% and we engage,
let's talk about why you're there.
If you're turned on by that 6% number, I'm going to show you how to get there. But it's a two-way street.
You got to work for it.
If you don't communicate things that way, you did. It was personal. You didn't want to pay me, and
you're just being cheap.
Yeah, and that's the person.
It goes back to that slide for that fishbowl. What they were talking about. Go to a company that's going to having that conversation, being transparent, engaging. But again, once it goes back to another of your great points there, the frontline, the supervisors, the managers have to be good at having those conversations.
When my wife gives back my phone, I promise not to yell at fishbowl anymore.
Your blood pressure, John. Your blood pressure.
So some of you folks have heard this idea that the idea of critical workforce. When we look at our folks, we have to start. There are natural leaders, there's natural performers, there's natural folks that get the credit union experience and do a great job for our members. You're never going to be 100%. So why not look at folks in this quadrant? The core folks, the core workforce, we want to be fair. That's your biggest chunk of folks. The flexible labor is like, instead of, if we can't afford the technical specialist, do we buy that on the market for project-specific work? Mm-hmm. And then specialist, my definition, and I know it's elementary, but if the person goes on vacation, the work piles up until they get back. There's not a lot of cross-training or backups. So specialists are important. But of these quadrants, what's the priority, Jeff?
Critical workforce.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got to focus there.
So, but the hardest thing of that, well, who is it?
Yep. And there's the other thing is that it's going to be hard to define because every organization has a different strategy. Every organization has a different critical workforce. If you're going to be expanding a branch, suddenly tellers are a very critical workforce to be able to get them in there. It might be possible to be able to say, okay, for this situation, we're going to change our pay philosophy for this particular area based on our need.
Yeah. So, any plan like this, we have to have a definition of, who's going to qualify for that. That's worth your time.
Yep. Get that 9 box out.
It's got to be different than, I'll know it when I see it, or my gut says, because that's where you get the misperceptions because it's going to be inconsistent.
The other piece of this also is that it's not your top performers that are always in your critical workforce.
No.
Your top performance is one thing. Critical workforce is another thing. They can overlap, absolutely. But we want to look at this from 2 different sides. Top performance should be rewarded through the merit increases. Critical workforce should be rewarded by rewards and recognition.
did you pay me to do a segue for you here?
It's what I do.
It's top performers versus critical workforce.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. Slide is ready there.
Yeah. Thanks for doing your homework, Jeff.
So wait, I was supposed to look at this before this?
No, not at all. But this just reinforces what Jeff just said is, these are stats of what people are, how they're tackling this concept, and 54% of organizations are tracking that. So in the credit union space, now this is all industries. This study, credit unions are not at 50s, but that's something that we have to get on that bandwagon a little bit stronger. 71% of the organizations rely on managers to identify that. And I think we do a really good job in credit unions of defining the competencies that differentiate our business, whether it's leadership competencies or delivery competencies or technical competencies. We do a good job. We just don't take it the next step and say, okay, are we ready to commit to critical workforce? Mm-hmm. And then the idea is that it's okay to have 2 tiers of your comp structure going. If you're in the critical workforce, maybe your comp ratio target is 60, 75th, and your core workforce is 55. 5% premium over market for core, maybe 10 or 15% above. That's a way to move them through and recognize where they are. And then retention bonuses, larger bonuses, getting the pools are very, very important.
And I mean, when we start talking about this, inevitably we get the conversation of, Jeff, it's extremely hard to recruit just a butt in the seat at this point. If I start, really reinforcing this top performance and I don't give it to these okay performers who, quote unquote, are punching the clock, I'm going to lose them. So I just have to give everybody as much as I can, and I only have so much. So that's why I have to do it this way.
Okay.
What do you tell them?
Yeah, exactly.
So the whole concept is that, again, I think going back to John's concept of saying, you could have earned up to 6%, but let's talk about what you need to do to get there. So you don't have to distribute it out equitably or evenly. It is fair. It is based in the concept of we're paying for that performance. We're paying for those critical workforce environment. And then when they say, you know what, hey, Bob got 6%, I got 3%, that's not fair. Oh, is it? Let's have a conversation about what you've done in this time, your performance, to be able to earn that amount.
So some good strategies there to look at. I just want to refer to a question real quick. Jeff had said somebody read an article from Mercer using the idea of allowance accounts during inflationary times. So you look at instead of adjusting base salary, you look at transportation, groceries. My definition of that was the gas cards.
Yeah.
The idea of, because if you build it in as a program, there's no takebacks. Because when do you deem inflation not enough to roll back that program? Mm-hmm. But if you do the one-time things and you do different things and you show empathy, I think you get more return than a formal program that you're going to have to roll back or modify because it's going to be perceived as a takeaway, right?
And lump sums are a great thing because it's cash in hand right as you need it. I'm not getting a small amount of it. It's a good increase and I appreciate it. But, I go back to that J.G. Wentworth commercial. It's my cash and I need it now kind of situation. So you lump sums, allowances, things like that, great ideas, good concepts, as long as they're well executed and they're fairly distributed. You have to have a good regulatory kind of or policy around how that goes through. And that also kind of goes to that other side of where I don't want to say payday advances, but it was that similar kind of thing.
Yeah, the programs where you can get your paycheck a
little early.
Yep. I think I think that is real responsive to a frontline employee worried about, can I get to Monday?
Yep.
And we want that peace of mind. And so those programs are going to be well received.
And I mean, if we're able to bridge that gap and we gain a lifelong employee because of that, great. There is always that opportunity. Yeah, they took their, check early and okay, we're going to cut it out of their PTO when they leave or something along that line. But we have to look at it from the employee-centric focus without overdoing that performance piece or focusing on that performance piece.
Okay. On our next slide here, the idea, I think we can all agree that the first year is tenuous at best. The days and weeks before they start doesn't mean they're starting. So we're seeing this as a strategy for first year. And first year meaning maybe some type of signing recognition that, hey, you're coming to work for us. Here's some transition dollars. I always tell young folks the best 2 weeks of their life is when they resign from a job and start a new job. You know you got some money coming. You don't have any work responsibilities, and you're going to have the best vacation of your life or just hanging out, right? So the idea of a signing bonus, if you're having to change town, move apartments, fix the car, do a little something to become refreshed, can be really well received. And then onboarding before they onboard simply means the idea is that just because say they're coming doesn't mean they're coming. I mean, we should have a poll of HR folks. How many calls have you got Monday morning?
Oh, and by the way, I'm not coming.
Well, today it's text like, hey, or it's ghost.
Hey, thanks, bye.
Yeah, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
And then multi-step increases in year one, like when they finish, first round of training, a recognition piece, 6 months into the job and they're getting in a recognition piece and then getting on your regular cycle. But make sure we're doing real-time performance evaluations that coincide with those multiple distributions. And then finally, custom. You got to figure out what motivates a person from day one and make sure that we're customizing.
Yeah, I really think we have to focus on that onboard before they board and the real-time performance evals.
Yeah.
Those are the big asterisks for me.
And the custom is going to be
Extremely
the flexibility, not work from home.
Yeah.
We're a retail business and it's hard to do that for all the jobs. But flexibility, yeah.
Yep.
And I go back to the 80s and 90s where we loved senior citizens and we loved people that were at community college and they could only work Thursdays and Fridays. Guess what? That was our busiest days. We just connected schedules. So we got to get back to that idea of flexibility for retention.
Yep.
And not think it's just everybody's got to work from home.
Yeah, there's another option other than remote, and it's flexibility.
Is that a bumper sticker? I like that.
I think so.
Did you say that?
I'll have to replace my "Where's the Beef" bumper sticker from the 80s, but
That's so true.
It's time.
So let's continue this discussion on, what if we do multiple distributions of merit increases? What would be the impact?
So overall, I mean, you can see that the impact is obviously more, but when it comes down to it, you can budget for it, you can plan for it, and if we really tie in the performance piece, we're getting an opportunity to really check in with every one of our employees, how performance is going, make sure those key performance
check-ins
indicators
are
are going.
huge.
Yeah, it's huge, absolutely massive. I mean, if you think about it, we've been harping on this for years, an annual review. I don't remember what I had for breakfast 3 days ago. How the heck am I supposed to remember or change my behavior based off something I did 7 months ago? And that really, put a splinter in my manager's mind.
Yeah, that's so true. And what's the argument for giving a bonus? As soon as they get their bonus, they leave.
They leave. Oh,
right.
Gotcha.
So if we're doing
1 foot out the door,
and I think that's in a lot of industries. And as recruiters, we see seasons of business where a promotion was promised or the bonus was lighter than they thought or they didn't get what they wanted. They weren't in the recruiting pool in December, but in January, guess what? I'm throwing my hat in the ring because something wasn't delivered.
Yep.
So if you have 2 or 3 checkpoints along the year, do we postpone that decision? And that's to me is, you said earlier, well, this costs more, maybe not, right? If I can retain a few more people and I don't have to do the recruiting efforts, the training efforts, and getting people up to speed, maybe that's where I'd rather spend the money up front than, have to look at throwing the dice at the back end here. And walk them through this chart.
And this really ties into also the time value of money. I've been harping on this quite a long time. The salary is, and I'll use air quotes, more valuable than incentive or variable pay because the time value of money. So if we look at, our annual kind of concept is, we're just faking a budget here of $1 million. If we're saying, hey, a 5% merit increase, this is essentially we're going to be increasing at 5%. Here's our total afterwards. If we did a biannual, we don't have to do a 5%. We can do a 4% over time. And again, focused on performance. So not everyone's getting a 4%. It's just, guess what? Over the year, you're going to be eligible for up to 8% increase. And that's going to compound on top of the other piece. We're going to do one at the beginning of the year based off your performance, and then we're going to reevaluate again in the middle of the year to reevaluate your performance again.
Well, that's been the biggest pushback that I've had from folks is 3 performance appraisals. I hate appraisals. I have to spend time doing it 3 times a year.
Oh, yeah.
Well, not the way you're doing it.
It's a different process.
I love that word check-in.
Yeah.
That has a different connotation than the formal 10-page review, and I'm going to list all these things that you don't do well.
Exactly. And we've been talking about, the 4-question type of pay thing that we've done. It kind of modeled off of the Deloitte methodology that, a manager knows the answers to those 4 questions inherently. Mm-hmm. If they've had any conversation with their team, which I hope they have. I mean,
fingers crossed.
Part of management is managing, and I don't know, I'm throwing that out there, but to be able to do that check-in, it's extremely fast. Yeah. It's quick. You're able to come to a number very quickly and decide exactly, 1, actionable steps, and 2, how much we're actually going to move forward in merit increases as well.
So, in our chart here, you just, for the CFOs in the audience, just play with a couple scenarios. See how you would spend the money differently. And this is hypothetical. Maybe, I know people are deep in this right now, and maybe it's too late. But some of the things we're talking about don't have a January 1st ramp up. They can be done throughout the year. So don't give up on this process. We're happy to help and look and strategize with you if you want to, but give it a shot to see how to spend the money.
July is the new January. That's
absolutely.
Yeah. It's not Christmas in July. It's merit in July.
Oh yeah. So as a bigger theme, each level of organization, make sure you use all your tools. So do you have to have all your people under one pay umbrella? No, you have to have people under all one pay strategy, pay philosophy, but you can have different tools. And I think the more you can customize tools, the better. So here's just a quick schematic of how we would look at different levels and how we would do things. When you look at IT, mortgage, wealth management, when we really do comparables for comp outside of the credit union industry, because that's the natural place where they're going to land, and if we're not willing to offer some of those programs, we might not be getting the best and the brightest. Okay. And then finishing up, this person I would hire in a second. They get it. So I don't know if it was a plant on Facebook, but I actually went, yes, but I put a word in front of it when I said it.
Oh, yes, okay.
and he goes, hey,
deleted, yes.
He goes, I know this is unpopular, but when you ask for somebody's base salary, you're not getting anywhere near what you need to ask.
Yeah.
When you're in an interview and you're going to accept an offer. So, his analogy is like, what's the temperature outside? Okay, it's 92. 92 in Houston is a heck of a lot different than 92 in some other places around the globe.
Some of you coming to the symposium might find that out firsthand.
No, it never rains. It never floods. There's no
crazy talk
during our symposium. But it's a great analogy. You need to know a lot of different things. So when it comes to compensation, work-life balance, culture, retirement, how they look at benefits, those are the questions that you need to ask, not just, I make 72 and now they want to pay me 78. Is that a good offer?
Maybe.
That's not the right question. No. So I love that frame. So what I want HR people is to take that slide, and when somebody brings them something from the internet and says, I should be making this, yes, but, when do you work? How do you work? What are the benefits like? And I always said, shame on us if a single mom with 2 kids and a car that's breaking down leaves our credit union for 50 cents an hour more someplace else, and then she has to pay $1,000 a month for insurance.
And then insurance doesn't pick up immediately. And there's a lot of things that we've seen a lot of that happening where they'll leave for that dollar denomination. Yeah. And this kind of goes back to, it's not wrong for them because they see I can't make ends meet at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And I need that extra 25 cents, but they don't realize on the back end, I've heard this happening quite a few times. Boomerangs are becoming a very big thing now. They went, whoops.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in subsequent things of don't give up on the people that left because the grass has not been as green.
Yep.
And I've loved tracking mortgage folks. So they left for 10 grand more because, I'm in the money. And then they get laid off 2 months later, but they don't necessarily want to come back to the credit union and say, I miss you. So they go to another mortgage place. They get laid off from the second place, and then they come see us.
Yep.
And prodigal son, come on back.
Yep.
And they know your stuff, they know your culture, and if they were good, they're going to understand it. But they just had to go out there and see it. Mm-hmm. I'm a boomerang. I did that with D. Hilton. You know that. I worked 10 years for D. Hilton and was traveling all over the country, and we had 2 kids, and I was missing the kids, and I said, I got to stay home. So I went to work for KPMG, and that commute was 10 minutes, not all over the country, and I saw my kids less. because KPMG FaceTime and I had to be there for hours and on and on and on. And I came back to D. Hilton because I thought I was making a difference in the industry. We made a commitment to have more folks to get out there and make changes. And I'm happy to be here. But I had to go out and say that. And see that.
Yep.
We're
so glad you came back, John.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, I wouldn't be here without you. So look at that.
Very nice to see. But again, the themes I came across today, those early retirees are coming back. Mm-hmm. Some of those people and some of those key job families are going to come back. So open the door. And in subsequent things we're going to be talking about is internal mobility, making sure we're training people up and getting rid of some of the stigmas and myths of why a person from here can't go there.
Yep.
So those things to look forward with. So with that said, look forward to more information coming from us on the other 4 trends. We just want to make sure we give them proper justice and proper context. We can't just run through some slides and make you feel like, we've given you value. So today we wanted to get budget out there. We're happy to talk to anybody about any scenarios that they're thinking about and help you see, the pros and cons of different strategies. But today we want to get those numbers in front of you and start talking about this idea of, do we need to look at critical workforce? If we come to the point in our industry where that makes more sense.
Yeah, and absolutely. Data is one thing. Information is another thing. And being able to take that data and turn it into information. And John, you always accurately articulate exactly what that data is telling us. So we do sincerely appreciate you taking the time to do so.
So 2 things you learned today?
Multiple things I learned today. I can't narrow it
down.
Don't
look at that Instagram account. You will cry.
Fishbowl bad.
It's horrible. And Fishbowl is entertaining, but, put a limit. You do your kids with TV, right?
Yeah.
How old are your kids right now?
Digital well-being, 5 and 4.
And how much TV are they allowed to watch?
They get about 15 minutes after breakfast, and that's before school, so they get that. And then when they come home, they've got to do, chores, things along that line before they can get one. We do Bluey. Bluey is a big thing in our house right now, and they're about 7 minutes long, so they can watch 2 of those.
Okay. They're going to write a book about you.
I think
That's
so.
horrible.
Well, I did just get a text from the kindergarten teacher saying that Reagan is absolutely amazing. I never have to tell her to work. I just wanted to reach out and tell. And those kindergarten texts don't mean anything, but they sure meant something to me. I felt like I was doing something right.
Congratulations, Dad. That's awesome. But again, look at that Fishbowl, but put a time limit on it.
Digital well-being.
Yeah. We want everybody feeling good. So anyway, thanks for today. If there's anything we didn't cover, if anybody wants to write any questions down, we have a couple minutes. One question that I missed was, what are the 4 check-in questions?
I'll have to get the exact ones on those, but it's essentially saying, if I could promote this person today, I would. If I have, I would work with this person as much as I can if I have an important project.
If I have a special project, would you put them on the team?
Would you put them on the team? Yeah.
If you could give only one raise, would this person get the raise?
I would give this person a maximum increase.
The maximum increase.
Yeah. So they're very quick. It's modeled off of the Deloitte mentality, and it's the concept of, let's not talk about what we feel about that person, but what we would do with that person.
And since we got a little time, working in the public accounting space, getting paid every 2 weeks, you wasted a half a day every 2 weeks trying to find billable hours. Like, what did I do? And so I could charge clients. And that was supposed to leverage into performance management. And then look, your professional services, you can't be earning at professional services if you're doing admin work. So I think they were wasting literally millions of hours, millions of dollars.
Huge.
And they came up with this thing. Now, I'm not going to say we've oversimplified it today, but it is a technique is to say, how does your gut reaction to this worker or this employee or this person under you do, and then use that is part of the performance management process.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of information out there on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives the HR actionable steps rather than just saying, well, we're late 1 to 5, so on and so forth. It gives them to say, what, this manager is really looking at this person for promotion. Let's start talking about career progression. And that goes back to, up and out is over. Let's talk about, if they're really interested in mortgage, can we get them there? How do we get them there? What's the career path?
That's much more valuable to what they haven't done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeff, just to let you know, if I had a special project, I'd ask for you on the team.
Oh, really?
I would.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
I mean, there is no Jeff on team, right?
We'll get the Jeff
I get
out of
other
him.
people too, right?
We'll beat the Jeff out of you.
The chain of command is the chain I beat you with until you understand who's in charge around here.
There you go. Anyway, thanks guys for tuning in. Look for more information. And just a quick plug, our symposium is November 10th and 11th. If you go to our website, I think we're like waiting lists now, but go ahead and get in because like last year with COVID, people were uncertain. So, don't give up if you still wanted to come. It's in the Woodlands, Texas, and have a really strong program together. So look forward to seeing you there and look for information like early next week about the dates for the next presentations on those other trends.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. We do sincerely appreciate you spending some time with us. Again, this webinar has been recorded and we'll post it on the website soon. You'll also receive a email follow-up that will have a link of the PowerPoint slides in it. So you'll be able to download those. And please, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always certainly happy to talk with you. Thank you so much again. We look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe. Bye-bye.